The wrestling world exploded when Brock Lesnar's music hit and the Beast Incarnate walked through the curtain to join War Games. Nobody saw it coming. The rumors had been swirling for weeks about surprise entrants and shocking returns, but this was beyond anything anyone could have predicted. Lesnar had been off television for months with speculation running wild about his future in the company and whether he would ever step foot in a WWE ring again. When that unmistakable entrance theme blasted through the arena speakers, the crowd went absolutely insane. If you're loving this breakdown of the most shocking moment in recent WWE history, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we've got all the latest updates and analysis coming your way. The setup for War Games had been building for weeks, with two teams forming on opposite sides of a bitter rivalry. On one side you had the established stars who had been running the show for months, claiming they were the backbone of the brand and deserved respect. On the other side, a group of hungry competitors who felt they had been held back and overlooked despite their talent and dedication. The tension between these factions had reached a boiling point, with attacks happening backstage, brutal ambushes during matches, and verbal warfare that had fans picking sides. The general manager announced that this feud would be settled inside the most dangerous structure in wrestling history. War Games would be the battleground where scores would be settled and dominance would be established once and for all. The match was set to be a traditional 5-on-5 affair, with both teams carefully selecting their members. Each team had announced 4 members, leading to intense speculation about who would fill the 5th and final spot. The team of hungry challengers had made their selections known, quickly assembling a group of athletes who had been waiting for their opportunity to prove themselves on the biggest stage. They were young, they were motivated, and they were ready to tear down anyone standing in their way. The established veterans took more time with their selections, playing mind games and keeping everyone guessing. They announced 3 members immediately, then made a show of deliberating over their final 2 spots. When they announced their 4th member, everyone assumed the 5th would be someone from the current roster, someone who had aligned with them in recent weeks. The night of War Games arrived with the arena packed to capacity and the energy electric. Fans had traveled from all over the country to witness this spectacle, knowing they were about to see something special. The steel structure loomed over the 2 rings, creating an ominous atmosphere that sent chills down the spines of everyone in attendance. This was not going to be a normal wrestling match. This was going to be war. The rules were explained to the crowd, with the match starting with 1 member from each team and additional members entering at timed intervals. The team that won the coin toss would have the advantage, with their members entering more frequently. Once all 10 competitors were inside the cage, the match would officially begin, and it could only end by pinfall or submission. The coin toss went to the veteran team, giving them a significant advantage. The match began with representatives from each side entering first and immediately going at each other with intensity. These 2 warriors battled back and forth, using every inch of both rings and throwing each other into the steel cage walls. The crowd was on their feet from the opening bell, knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary. When the first timed interval ended, a member from the veteran team entered, giving them the numbers advantage. The beating that followed was hard to watch, as the lone member of the challenger team was overwhelmed by 2 opponents working together to inflict maximum damage. They threw him into the cage, repeatedly slammed him on the steel between the rings, and hit him with double team maneuvers that drew gasps from the audience. The intervals continued, with members alternating entry as planned. Each time a new competitor entered, the dynamic shifted and the action intensified. The challenger team fought valiantly despite being at a disadvantage, using heart and determination to survive the onslaught. When the numbers were even, the action became even more chaotic, with bodies flying everywhere and the cage being used as a weapon by both sides. The veteran team maintained control through experience and teamwork, showing why they had been dominant for so long. They isolated members of the opposing team, working them over methodically and preventing them from building any sustained momentum. The announcers emphasized that the challenger team was still waiting on their 5th member, wondering who would be entering to complete their squad. The time came for the veteran team's 5th and final member to enter. The anticipation was enormous, as everyone wanted to know who they had selected to complete their dominant lineup. The countdown began, with the crowd chanting along as the numbers ticked down. When the buzzer sounded, the entrance music that played was not what anyone expected. Brock Lesnar's theme erupted through the sound system, and the entire arena lost their minds. People were jumping out of their seats, screaming in disbelief as the Beast Incarnate appeared at the top of the ramp. Lesnar stood there for a moment, taking in the reaction before marching toward the ring with purpose and intensity. This was not a man coming out for a casual appearance. This was a destroyer coming to inflict punishment. The look on the faces of the challenger team was pure terror. They had been fighting with everything they had just to stay competitive, and now they had to deal with Brock Lesnar entering fresh while they were already exhausted and battered. Lesnar entered the cage and immediately started throwing people around like they were nothing. He hit a German suplex on one opponent, sending him flying across the ring. He grabbed another and delivered a thunderous F5 that shook the entire structure. Within seconds of entering, Lesnar had completely changed the complexion of the match. The veteran team rallied around their powerhouse addition and began a systematic destruction of their opponents. The challenger team had no answer for the Beast Incarnate. Everything they tried was ineffective, as Lesnar shrugged off their offense and continued his rampage. The final member of the challenger team entered, but even with complete rosters, the match was now completely one-sided. Lesnar was unstoppable, hitting signature moves on anyone who came near him. His teammates fed him opponents and he disposed of them with ease. The crowd was going crazy watching the Beast Incarnate dominate in the War Games environment. This was exactly the kind of match made for someone like Lesnar, where brutality and power were rewarded and the steel structure gave him even more ways to punish his opponents. He threw people into the cage walls with sickening thuds. He hit suplexes on the steel platform between the rings. He was a man possessed and there was nothing anyone could do to stop him. The match officially began with all 10 men now inside the structure. The veteran team wasted no time going for the finish. They had softened up their opponents enough, and with Lesnar on their side they knew victory was assured. Lesnar hit another devastating F5 on the captain of the challenger team and went for the cover. The referee counted to 3 and it was over. The veteran team celebrated inside the cage as their music played and the crowd gave them a standing ovation. But the real story was Brock Lesnar. His return to WWE in this capacity was shocking enough, but doing it at War Games in such a dominant fashion made it even more significant. This was a statement to everyone in the locker room that the Beast Incarnate was back and he was coming for everything. The aftermath of the match saw the veteran team standing tall while medical personnel checked on members of the challenger team. Lesnar stood in the center of the cage looking out at the crowd with that signature intensity he's known for. He had just reminded everyone why he's considered one of the most dangerous competitors in wrestling history. The questions immediately started flying. How long would Lesnar be sticking around this time? What were his goals now that he was back? Who would be brave enough to step up and challenge him? The landscape of the entire roster had just shifted dramatically with his return, and everyone was going to have to adjust to this new reality. The next episode of television following War Games was must-see because everyone wanted to hear from Lesnar and his team. The show opened with the entire veteran faction coming to the ring, with Lesnar standing in the middle looking like he could destroy everyone in the building. The leader of the group took the microphone and explained why they had kept Lesnar's involvement a secret. They knew the shock value would be worth it, and they knew having the Beast Incarnate on their side made them untouchable. Lesnar didn't say much because he never does, but his presence spoke volumes. He was here to fight and he was here to win, and anyone who had a problem with that could step up and get destroyed. The fallout continued, with other superstars on the roster responding to Lesnar's return. Some were excited about the opportunity to test themselves against one of the best to ever do it. Others were clearly worried about what this meant for their own positions in the company. The tag team division wondered if Lesnar would come after their titles. The singles champions had to be looking over their shoulders, knowing the Beast Incarnate could set his sights on any championship he wanted. The entire locker room dynamic had changed overnight, and everyone was trying to figure out how to navigate this new situation. Lesnar's reputation preceded him, and nobody wanted to be on the receiving end of his wrath. The speculation about Lesnar's next move dominated wrestling conversations. Would he immediately challenge for a championship, or would he continue working with his team to establish dominance? Would we see him in singles matches, or would he stick to tag team and faction warfare? The beauty of having Lesnar back was that any direction the company chose to go would be compelling because he elevates everything he's involved in. His matches feel important because of his presence and his aura of danger. Every time he appears on television, people pay attention because they know something significant is about to happen. That's the value of having someone like the Beast Incarnate on your roster, and WWE clearly understood that when they brought him back for War Games. The challenger team had to regroup and figure out their next steps after the devastating loss. They had given everything they had, but it wasn't enough once Lesnar entered the equation. Some members of the team questioned whether they should have expected something like this and if they could have prepared better. Others were simply focused on revenge, wanting another opportunity to prove they belonged at the top level. The leader of the challenger faction cut a passionate promo about how they wouldn't be discouraged by one loss no matter how brutal it was. They promised to come back stronger and find a way to overcome their opposition, even with Brock Lesnar in the mix. It was compelling television that kept fans invested in the storyline moving forward. Lesnar's return also sparked debates about his legacy and where he ranks among the all-time greats. Some fans have criticized him over the years for his part-time schedule and for holding championships while appearing infrequently. Others argue that his special attraction status is exactly what makes him valuable and that his matches always deliver when he does compete. The War Games appearance seemed to address some of those concerns by having him work a full match in a grueling environment rather than a quick squash. He was in the ring for an extended period and showed he could still go when the situation called for it. This helped win over some critics who had questioned his commitment to the business. The merchandising opportunities that came with Lesnar's return were immediate and significant. New t-shirts featuring the Beast Incarnate with War Games imagery hit stores within days. Special edition programs and commemorative items celebrating his return sold out quickly. The company knew how to capitalize on big moments, and this was certainly one of them. Social media exploded with reactions to his appearance, with clips of his entrance and his dominant performance being shared millions of times. Wrestling news sites had his return as their top story for days, with analysts breaking down what it meant for the industry and for WWE specifically. The buzz generated by one surprise appearance demonstrated the star power Lesnar still possessed. Looking at the bigger picture, Lesnar's involvement in War Games represented WWE's commitment to making their premium live events feel special. They could have brought him back on a random episode of television or saved him for one of the big 4 pay-per-views, but choosing War Games showed they wanted to elevate that particular event. It worked because people will remember this War Games specifically because of Brock Lesnar's shocking return. That's how you create moments that stand the test of time, and that's how you keep fans engaged and excited about your product. The unpredictability factor cannot be overstated because when fans think anything can happen, they're more likely to tune in live rather than catching up later. The matches that could potentially happen now with Lesnar back in the fold are endless and exciting to think about. Dream matches with current top stars who weren't around during his previous runs become possible. Rematches with old rivals who have unfinished business could draw huge interest. Tag team combinations involving Lesnar would be fascinating to see. The creative possibilities expanded dramatically the moment he walked through that curtain at War Games. Smart booking could keep him relevant and interesting for years to come without overexposing him or diluting his impact. The key is using him strategically in situations that matter and making every appearance count toward building compelling stories. If you've made it this far, you clearly love wrestling as much as we do, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we're bringing you all the latest news, breakdowns and predictions as this story continues to develop, and trust us, with Brock Lesnar back in the mix, things are only going to get more intense from here.